Greetings to everyone, my name is Syroyid. I'm professor of music education, doctor of musicology, pianist, and composer. In today's video, I'll be overviewing and presenting one of the compositions that recently finished my student, John Samuel. He is a young boy, he's age 12. Now he recently turned 13. And this is, well, officially the first piece that he published. That's why it's given OP number 1. And basically it's a prelude in C major. The whole idea is to write a set of 24 preludes in all major keys. So first thing we'll do is we'll listen to the prelude as it's quite advanced. I just wanted to show the video of John Samuel himself playing it. And then of course throughout the video I'll be playing the extracts and trying to analyze the piece. So let's start with the performance. Right, so as you can see from the recording, it's from October 5th, and it's quite recent, just 2 months ago. And as I might really acknowledge, this is a miracle, a musical miracle that we're witnessing here with a very distinct musical language that could resemble easily the style of Rachmaninoff and maybe Scriabin in the early works, and that's actually really evolving right now in the current composition lessons that we're having. I'm seeing him moving towards more advanced chords, more advanced harmony. And basically before analyzing the piece, I'd like to give a little bit of background on him and show you his portfolio. So here we can see his website where there is a little bio. So that's the info that we have, John Samuel Varco. And he actually studied harpsichord and organ. Right now he's mostly focused on piano and composition. And he started learning piano around age of 9. So it's not a prodigy that started maybe age 4, 2, or 3, like many of these young prodigies do. And composition-wise, from what I know and from what he has told me, he has been improvising these shorter pieces and writing them down from the early ages. But right now he's kind of really focused on the composition and has, made significant progress in the last months. So he has already professional certifications of the American Guild of Organists and the service plan certification of the colleague certification. So these are like major degrees that usually people get in their 18s or 20s. But not as a teenager, being 12, no. So it's quite surprising. I mean, for me, it was a really pleasant addition to my current students. And currently, well, I'm really enjoying seeing John move forward with all of these styles. And currently, well, he is really focused on the neo-romantic style. At the moment, as I've mentioned, one of the projects, large-scale projects, is the set of preludes. This would be the first one of them. Also, there is a sonata and a theme with variations that's also there in the progress, and probably after we finish that, we'll start our instruction and teaching in the string quartets. So if you would like to see more of his music, please let me know that in the comments. We'll see how this video is going to be received. Right, he has a YouTube channel where you can basically watch his YouTube performances. There he is playing the organ, and also there is a Patreon page where you can support him. So I would invite everyone who is willing to do this, well, to take the membership to support his music creation. And also you can find here his score for the Prelude. That Prelude is also available on Sheet Music Plus online. And well, there is an upcoming concert, so if you're in the United States, you could visit the Steinway and Sons Silo Hill concert series. And basically there is going to be this one in April 5th. He's going to be playing pieces by Liszt, Mendelssohn, Beethoven, Liebermann, and maybe also some of his own compositions. And well, as you can see, he's really, really young and talented. And what we'll be trying to do today is to understand what are the foundations of this prelude and how it was written. So first and foremost, as we can see, it's a prelude in C major, and it's relatively chromatic because we can see accidentals right from the very beginning. There is a very big motif here that's structuring the discourse, and is this ascending pattern that a little bit resembles the sort of melodic motion that you might find in Beethoven. Right, in those cases, that motion would be a fourth that goes there, but in this case we have a sixth, so it's a quite distinct motif. And I remember, like, in the first drafts that we were having with John, that motif was appearing sparsely, so we were having just this strong opening, but then he went with more and more ideas, which is quite common. And in this case, I mean, John is a magnificent improviser. He can improvise very easily, and I really hope that in the future you'll be hearing more of his improvisations and recordings. But one issue that improvisation can carry with it's that you might be just introducing a lot of new ideas. So the thing that we really want to explain here is that motivic unity is really important in order to build a coherent composition. In this case, that motif, which we highlighted here, is going to be recurring and appearing throughout the entire piece in multiple ways and forms. So here we have it, the first presentation. Here it's appearing again. And now it's in the bass, for instance, right? So we are seeing that sort of development. Now, as you can be hearing from me when I play this, I might be misplaying a few notes here and there because honestly, my playing level isn't at that level of just fluently being able to sight read and play all of this music. But it's true that John is really trying to expand the limits of the playability, and oftentimes we can see these extended chords that are moving from bass to chord. So the first thing that we highlighted here is this motif, which we can give the name X. That's the X motif. It's going to be repeated in different places. And then we have a Y motif, which is a different one, a contrasting one. We might give it maybe a green color. And it's this chromatic scale, right? So right from the very beginning, these two motifs exist. And you have this chromatic scale, which in a way it's paired as a group of two, but at the same time, it's an individual unit of just two notes. So we have, right? And I want to highlight with a different color the motion. So when it's going to be ascending, like that, when we're going upwards, it's going to be with green. When it's going to be going downwards, I want to put it with a blue color. So let's use this color for the descending one, right? And here we have the descending scale. Right, we also get it here with a sort of variation, right? And there is more of it here in this ascending gesture. So mostly, I mean, these green cell variations weren't introduced with such rigor or thinking explicitly about them. But definitely, I mean, I was supervising there, making sure that the motifs as such reappear, because otherwise the entire structure would be just randomly moving up and down. So clearly we can start to see how all of the musical fabric starts to be related and connected with the presence just of these two motifs, the sixth and the second scale, and then we have the chromatic scale. So that's the first thing that I really would like to highlight. And then the other one is probably the foundation, harmonic foundation. So we'll be getting there. One important element here is the pedal point. So as you can see, there is this C, which creates a prolongation. So this is what we call a prolongational sequence, where you have basically the harmony, it's a prolongational progression, progression. Sequence, it's when you're moving. So it's a prolongational progression of the tonic, where in the tonic, which is C major, and basically what we're witnessing, it's C major as it's in the root position, tonic, that moves to this dominant chord. The original chord would be just G, right? G7, we could say. And the rest is like these added color tones. And then we're getting back to the tonic. So that's basically a very classical statement, and it doesn't have anything particularly complicated from the harmonic point of view. What makes it unique, and I really might want to insist on that, is the added notes. So if you look at this F sharp, clearly that's pointing to the Lydian scale. Lydian sonorities are these that have the sharp 4. And when we look into the G sharp, it's the sharp 5th, right? So that's another color note that's really important. So we have this sharp 5th, which basically creates an augmented chord. If you have C major and you add the G sharp, you get this chord. At the same time, when this is being presented the first time, the chord that we hear actually is not C major, but it's this F sharp half diminished. So F sharp half diminished is usually spelled as F sharp minor flat 5. That's the half diminished chord, 7th flat 5, which is this. So we have, right, that sort of chord. So the lesson from that is that adding these chromatic scales to a melody really enrich and provide you with a very rich sonority and various sorts of chords. Now, once you have here this place, the actual chord is diminished, right? So it's G7, we can say even flat 9, because the flat 9 is, they're really important. But the actual notes that we're having is G, B, D, F, and A flat. Right, so that's the chord. Now, you might be wondering, what is then the E? Well, this E is a 13th, right? And then we have this C sharp, which creates the sharp 11th. That's the sharp 4, the same Lydian sound. We're getting it here again. So that's the Lydian sound that again enriches the chord. First we had C major, then we have G. And I really like how cleverly this E minor is being placed here, because we're hearing E minor, which really gives a lot of color to the piece. And from there, we arrive to the dominant overtonic. If originally the 9th was flat, here we get the major 9th, which is really much more diatonic and creates a sort of new melody, because that melody, it's a new motif, And if we've used already the yellow, let's give it maybe red color, right? So that's going to be the red motif. That motif is being used, and probably here instead of using this, is being presented in this place. So what we have is right, the inversion of that motif being presented here. So these are inversions, I would say in free form inversions of the motif, the red motif. And one really important thing that all of this is doing is this raising direction. So as we can see, all of the pitch is moving upwards. So we have this raising direction of the music, which is ascending. We start with this low C, get higher, right? In that sense, I mean, that was a little bit my recommendation when John was writing this, because firstly, initially, the music was just moving around this dense texture with all of the chromatic notes, which is all his credit. I mean, he has this natural tendency to explore these chromatic chords, but at the same time, whenever we're working with a musical discourse that we want to make intelligible, it's important not to forget about the importance of musical direction, right? And the musical direction, in this sense, can clearly be seen with this ascending line, right? That keeps going and traveling until it reaches this high B. After that, it keeps going higher and higher, right? So probably I'll use, instead of red for the arrows, these other arrows that I was having, I'll use another color because it's maybe distracting us a little bit. I'll be using just maybe black. So these are the Lydian notes. And there we had the augmented fifth, which should be, no, not like that, like this. Right, good. All right, so having said this, we've analyzed like the first two measures. We have now C major. That goes to the 6th degree, right? The 6th degree is really important because that establishes the cadential gesture, which we try to hear here, which is the 6th degree going to the 2nd degree, which is also functioned here as dominant of the dominant, and then the tonic. So in a way, what we're witnessing here is a cadence that's featuring all of its notes. First, we have the 6th degree, right? And for cadences, I like to put these black arrows, black brackets. So we have this bracket, that's the perfect cadence. Now, the cadence would be perfect if we would end on C major, right? Since we're ending on the 3rd in the melody, then we have this imperfect cadence, right? It's not sounding as an ending of anything. So that would be the ending, but now we have, and it still sounds like the beginning of something. All right, so this is basically taking us to a variation of the theme, right? And structure-wise, I think at this moment, it might be interesting to try to understand or look into what might be the overall form. Clearly, for me, once this building up process was arriving and we get to bar 13, a new section begins. So this would be clearly, for me, called section B, although it's based on the same material as A. I mean, it's a prelude, so you have this monothematic concept. Monothematic means that we only have one theme. So in this case, we're in this section that's kind of modulating and being different. And then after that, in this second half, there is a sort of recapitulation that starts here, which is section A again, which is the recapitulation. So section B is relatively short indeed in this case, but well, it's quite functional. You have these 5 measures. And then after this, we have the buildup that leads probably to the most explosive moment, which is the coda. So we have this culmination here with the triple forte and triple fortissimo, and even quadruple F at the end. So that's the coda, which is the ending. Right, now let's focus then on the first section first, and then we'll be looking at this second half. I mean, even if this is the recapitulation, this has a little bit of that binary concept, which was really seen in Bach, where you have two parts. The first half of the piece is in one key, which is just defining the tonic. And in the second half, you're seeing the modulations that basically return back to the original key, right? In terms of structure, basically this is 28 bars. So bar 13 is more or less the middle section of the piece, right? And after that, we have the second half. So this is like the second half of the prelude. And the first half is starting here. So that's the first half of the prelude, and it's section A. Right, section A as such is built of these units of 4. So we have right, that's the first unit of 4. And that's the last unit of 4, which starts here. And that unit of 4 basically extends and builds there. So it's a ternary phrase. As we can see, it's a phrase that's built from 3, it's a section built from 3 phrases. So we have 3 phrases, which are basically 4 bars plus 4 plus 5. That's the overall structure. So first phrase is this one. That's phrase 1. Then we have the phrase 2, which is larger in terms of concept. It's building up more. And then we have phrase 3, which has the forte and it's the loudest. So it's like in a stepwise motion, we're starting low, we're getting bigger and bigger, eventually with phrase 3 being the largest of all. And since already we're in this very big texture, what we have here is an extension, a cadential extension, which originally was relatively short, and what we wanted to do is build it up and make it more extensive. And basically, well, that's what we arrived here. By extending the cadential extension, we arrived to this fortissimo that was there. Good, so going back to where we were analyzing, I think, well, it's quite clear how here we're having this circle of fifths, because if you look at the 6th degree, that's this A goes to D goes to G, and G goes to C. If you don't want to look into that A, you can look into this A. So that's a sequence of fifths. Right. Here I remember actually asking John to remove some of the music because it was too busy. And sometimes by leaving space and having these empty moments where there is more silence provides more contrast. In the more empty space you have like this, it lets you, whenever you hear the theme back again, hear it with a different understanding. And that's basically what we arrived there. So let's kind of highlight the blue motif would continue there because that's a chromatic scale. And this is another chromatic scale that we have there. So these are chromatic motions. Right, good. What is this chord? This chord, which is dominant of the dominant, it's a D9th, but actually it has the 13th. So what are the 9th and the 13th? The 9th is this one, and the 13th is the B. That's dominant 7th, 9th, and 13th. Right. What is this chord? Well, that chord is the dominant 9th, flat 9. Right, so we would have G7 flat 9, but it's suspended. So what we're seeing is this suspension of the 4th that goes to the 3rd, and that suspension is particularly compelling, as it's an imitation in one way of the previous phrase. So we have this canon-like imitation. I mean, we will see a much better and well-written canon in the upcoming sections. Right? Which is basically that motion. right? So what is this? This is basically a very unique texture, because this is what I call heterophony. And heterophony, it's whenever you have one melody and at the same time you're ornamenting it. Right? You can find maybe this sort of texture in the wrong notes prelude. No, it's not prelude, etude by Chopin. Right, where you're kind of like seeing some sort of ornamentation and at the same time the melody is being present. In this case, it's a little bit freer, but definitely that means that I can clearly highlight what are the yellow notes in the melody. So here we can see, I'm not sure why this yellow now it's not so strong. Let's see if maybe that's the yellow I needed to use. Yeah, that's the one. So I have the original notes, as you can see, but some are missing and they're expanded. So this is right. It's based around the same concept, but we're seeing the melody ornamented. So that's why I give it the yellow color. So ornamentation. Good. Once we arrive there, we have this lovely gruppetto that takes us to this chord. So still the pedal point is prevailing. The concept of having a pedal point, we had it before, was this pedal point, which was there. And now we're having it here. Right, so it's these two pedal points, the essential pillars for the main key, but then we still have them here with C major. So those are letting us see the beginning of each section. Every section that is starting is basically starting with that sort of pedal point. Right, so now we can see harmonically that this is tonic. This is the second degree, which is D minor, and it's the seventh, and the inversion is the third inversion. Right, so this is how we have the harmony there. It's a D minor seventh. And it's not even a D minor major seventh, minor seventh, D minor major seventh. So the major seventh happens to be the C sharp, right? And the C is in the bass. So in a way, we're seeing both C sharp and C natural. And in those cases, I really would like better maybe to think of it as a D minor seventh, where the C sharp is the neighbor tone, or actually an accented passing tone, or appoggiatura, right? So we have this chromatic appoggiatura that's basically accentuating the dissonance of the C natural with the C sharp. Right, and here we have a very strong bass line, because it's right, it's this descending motion that's basically going from C to B flat to A flat and gets to G. Right, that journey is very common. It's a journey from the tonic to the dominant. So here we're in the tonic, and here we arrive to the dominant. Right. As this is happening, we have this harmony. Probably that chord that's spelled here needs to be respelled. So that's sometimes happening, but I would really consider it better maybe as an A flat. It all really depends on how we interpret it, but technically this is a B flat dominant seventh. So what we're seeing is a B flat dominant seventh chord, actually with a ninth, B flat dominant ninth with a sharp 11. So this is the chord in its root position. It's B flat, D, F, A flat, C. But instead of having the F, we have the E natural. So maybe we could even call it B flat dominant, flat 5. That's the chord. Probably the way that John thought it at the moment, and we could ask him, is the augmented chord in the top. So we have an augmented C chord, and in the bottom we just have this B flat. So we have right, which is quite pianistic. And that leads us to F minor major 7th, which is this chord, F minor major 7th, and eventually we have the G dominant 7th. So from the concept of functions, we have here the 2nd degree. The B flat is the flat 7. The F minor is the 4th, and this is the G, which is the dominant 5. So how do we explain the B flat? It's just the subdominant of the subdominant. B flat goes to F, right? That's a little bit that inverted circle of fifths. And that's how we get back to C. So I could actually highlight that so we see better the sequence of the harmony, but it's this B flat, it goes to F, and then it gets to C, right? So that's a little bit the logic that guides the process of returning back to the tonic. Melodically, there is a restatement, because obviously the material that we were hearing in this moment, which is this gruppetto or turn, it's very unique, and it's not standing without any repetition. So that's why we have here another presentation of it. Right? So how are these 3 phrases structured? In a way, phrase 1 is acting as an A, right? So this is a very good example of a clear structural organization. You have within A, the first section, it's a small a. This is within A, the contrasting section, so it's larger scale A, small case B. And here we're going back to A again, but this A is A prime. So it's a ternary form, A, B, A. Why is there felt like that? Because if you look at the beginning, you start with a Lydian sound. In the second phrase, we have the F natural, and we have these turns. So the turns, which are basically contrasting material, contrasting ornamentation, create the sense of a new section, or a new or a contrasting phrase, right? So that's why we're feeling that this is like an ABA and perceiving it once it's being presented. Whereas when we hear this again, we feel back the original A. So that's basically the logic behind that. Right, now let's keep looking at the other materials we have. I mean, you could be explaining these motions with the chromatic scale to some degree. So there is this, the descending chromatic motion is still very present. You have it here with the C to B, the A flat to G, right? And in a way, the F to E is also the chromatic motion. So these are all chromatic scales, half steps in a way, that are descending. But clearly, well, the texture is a little bit wider, it's more open, freer, and it's mostly based around the harmonic concepts that are here. But clearly now we are like in a full sounding tutti effect. Whereas at the beginning we were starting with a counterpoint, but everything was much more constrained, it was more limited in terms of the structure. So let's see now what was happening here. We're now in this third phrase, which is A prime, and we have again the same beautiful main motif. Right, it's presented there. Right, and the main melody is very important here, so I would actually give it a red line to highlight where that is. This is the main melody. And that main melody is now being present here. And now this other part, remember that here we had the circle of fifths, which was 6th, 2nd, 5th in tonic. In other words, A, D, G, C. That A, D, G, C is exactly the same that we have here. eventually C. So that's the 6th degree with the 7th. This is the dominant of the dominant. And this is basically the dominant function that goes to the tonic, right? And in this moment, we have like the first culmination. So all of this is a build-up process, building up process that leads to the first climactic point. And it's done with the cadential extension of the dominant basically being extended here with that type of pedal point in the G, right? So melodically, I think, well, the yellow motif is quite prominent. Let's look for the green motif. The green motif was the raising chromatic scales. So these are quite interesting. Here we have them. They're now done in octaves, right? So a little bit like in a Rachmaninoff style. But at the same time, well, we still have the same inner voices doing the chromatic scales. And here they are, again, in a much more prominent usage. So all of this build-up is basically an extension of that green motif. Even this little part right here, and then the other ones probably are the opposite motion. So they're going to be the blue ones, which are going either downwards like this, or here. And I'm actually was missing this other one, which is the green. It's ascending. E sharp to F sharp. Right, we're right there to C major. So I think that motivically, mostly this is what's happening. I mean, there are references maybe to the red motif, which was this. Right, we had it there. So let's see where the reference to that is. Right, it's an ornamentation, but basically that's the reference to the red one. We had the second. Right, probably seen it like that. But for the rest, these are free parts that are basically filling up the harmony. So what is a harmony? Let's see. We have the tonic. That's exactly the same as previously. All of the other chromatic notes that are basically enriching the Lydian and Lydian with Y, and the sharp augmented chord, right? Here maybe also that a G flat, A flat could be harmonized as G sharp because they are the same note. Now this is exactly the same harmonic concept, same harmony as bar 2, right? So there isn't much more. But here there are a few new things. This is a very Rachmaninoff sonority, which basically consists of the major scale with the flat 6th and the flat 7th. Is what we call the harmonic major scale. Or actually not harmonic, melodic major scale. The harmonic major scale would be like this. In this case, I'm seeing, right, the B flat being the flat 7th and the A flat being the flat 6th. And all of these basically enrich the sonority of C major, which now becomes increasingly more chromatic. And actually, when we hit the A flat at the same time as the C major chord, we're hearing basically that augmented 5th chord. And then it resolves to the tonic. Now, this is a second round of that same F sharp Lydian and augmented chord, and that basically leads us to the 2-5-1 with its precedent 6th degree, so 6-2-5-1. That basically leads to the last moment. Right. Now, let's play this. I'll try to do my best. Probably I won't be sounding as good as John himself when he was playing this, so let's see how this sounds. there we arrive to this culmination, right? So it's all a building up process, also raising in terms of motion, and quite easily getting, I would say, even a little bit out of the control of my capability to play all notes at once, right? So once we arrive there, and it's a very beautiful thing that I actually need to acknowledge here, is the rhythm that we have. It's 3 against 2. So this is a little bit like Brahms really used a lot this 3 against 2, 1, 2. And at the same time, it has really big leaps, which really characterize the writing of John. So we have a lot of leaps between bass and chords. All right, that's basically the culmination. We arrive to the high G, which is the highest note so far. And it's also a very clean C major chord. After which, we arrive to a section B, which basically has the character of a development. So the development needs to modulate. I remember going into this section with John and telling him to try to go to a further tonality and in a way returning back to the tonic, which is exactly what he does here. So first we have the change of mode. Originally it was. And also here the motif actually got shrinked. So instead of having the original octave, we have the original motif contracted, and this is probably resembling most more Beethoven, right? The very famous melody. So here we have it contracted, and it's being imitated in all sorts of positions. So let's find where is it being present. First and foremost, it's at the beginning, so that one should be highlighted. Then we have another entry here and a third entry above. So they're like entering in a stretto manner, right? This is connected. Right, in a way, that could be seen as an inverted version of that, so we'll need to highlight it. All right, so as we can see now, there is this inverted way of the motif, right, which is a little bit similar to the original way in which we had it the first time. So that's how it goes. Now, where do we have still the yellow motif? The yellow one is appearing here. And those are the green motif. The green motif, which consisted of the raising chromatic scale. First it was by diminution, right? But here we have it now by augmentation. So it's right, an augmentation development. So augmentation. Now the bass line in this case, it's an A flat. So A flat major is the chromatic lower, is the flat 6, and the flat 6 is the chromatic submediant. So we have, when we're in C, we have chromatic median, which is E major, E flat, and also we have the submediant. That's A major, A flat. Right, how do we get to A flat? A flat is what we call a common tone modulation. A common tone modulation is when you're going from C major to A flat major, and you have the common tone C. There's a common note, which is C, which is being shared by both C major and A flat. That's why when we end here, all we need is to change one note, E flat, but still the C is there. Right, it's a very well written 4-part writing, in which we start with what we can almost call a fugal start. So we have first one part, then you have a second part. There are two parts here, two parts. And then we have like the third part above, right? So in a way, we're starting with 2, 3, and then eventually we have here 4 parts, and even with the added notes, we're arriving to a few more. Now, that fugal imitation is quite free, so it's a stretto. Stretto is when we're condensing the entry of one theme with the previous. It's very common in the fugue, but in this case, it's fugal. It's a free imitation, and it can be seen. Imitation. It can be seen that one of them is starting on C minor, the other one's in A flat. So basically, these are relatively free. Now, what is the bass doing? We have A flat, then basically B flat. Right? It's a cadential gesture. Basically, it's the tonic, which we have here. So it's A flat major. It's tonic. The first degree, that is moving to the second degree, or predominant. From there, we're moving to this dominant feel, and then we're going back to the tonic. That's exactly what's happening here. So in a way, because there is not a strong cadence, all of this can be seen as a prolongation of the submediant, which is A flat. And when we're seeing this prolongation, is basically extending it. And that A flat, it's being extended because here it becomes a French, let's see. Yeah, it's a French augmented 6 chord. So it's a augmented 6 of the key of C. And this is a very common technique. So you're staying in A flat. C major. You want to do it again? You are now in B major. Now that can be going to B flat major. So these are very common ways where basically the tonic or the dominant becomes the augmented 6 of the next chord, right? And through that process, we're achieving the modulation. So the way we get to A flat, it's what we call a chromatic modulation. Well, it's a common tone modulation too, but it's chromatic because you have the E flat. So I really wanted to highlight that E flat. It's basically the note that's making it chromatic. And here we have the enharmonic modulation. This enharmonic modulation is dominant A flat dominant 7 equals augmented 6 of C. That's basically what it means. So it's the dominant of the Neapolitan chord. A flat is the dominant of Neapolitan, is the same as the augmented 6. And that's the way we're getting there. So what else do we have here? Well, we have the bass line. We already described the second predominant, so forth. Now let's look at the other motifs. So there is clearly this one, which is based all around the scales. Now they are tending to be more diatonic, but it's clearly the same concept, so it's descending scales. Let's try to see them in a more stricter manner. So we have here the chromatic ascending scale. This is the one, right? So it's basically there. Now here we have also a little bit of that chromatic ascending motion. We have it more prominently there, but maybe also here, C, right? And the other one is the descending motion, which in this case doesn't get to be that chromatic or isn't featured that often in a chromatic way. So it's D flat to C, it's chromatic, but then it's diatonic, right? What is this? Well, that's the inversion of that motif. right? So that's the red motif that we have. Right, and then as we can look into it closer, that can be also seen as a variation of the, it's a second with the fifth, right? So that can be also connected a little bit to the red motif. The bass is doing here contrary motion, which is really commendable, because usually, I mean, it's very common to just take everything in one direction, and here we have this beautiful contrary motion. So it's condensing, contrary motion, and at the same time the range is progressively being expanded. So we have this narrowing that's basically being expanded little by little. So here it's very narrow, and here we're getting to this wide emptiness, I would say, because it's a very big gap between this low A flat and this chord which is happening above. Right, and that wide disposition of the chord is really compelling. Harmonically, also when we hear the flat 6, we're in that major scale that we were talking about earlier, which is the A flat major melodic scale. It's similar to the same device we were seeing here. That's C major with that A flat and B flat. And now this one is A flat. Right, with that flat sonority. Right. So here I think those gestures are quite clearly seen, because we have, it could be seen also as a Phrygian scale, right? But really the center is A flat, so I wouldn't view it as such. Right, so that basically creates a new motif, which in essence it's the inversion, and we'll highlight it with the orange, the inversion of the original ascending motion. So the ascending motion at the beginning was, and now we have, right, and that could probably explain why this is diatonic and how we're seeing this motif there, and also this other motif that appears here. So those are basically the main ones. Now, harmonically, here we arrive to this chord, which is extremely interesting, but let's kind of go chord per chord. So we start first with the basic, which is A flat major. That's already something interesting. It's the fourth and the second. When these appear, we're basically hearing not so much A flat major, but B flat minor. So it's the second degree. It's a plagal cadence, as I like to see it, because it's a movement where we're just prolongating the tonic. And after that, we have the flat fourth degree. So that's the minor fourth degree, and it gets to this chord. So how is this chord? Well, firstly, it's an E flat chord, which is suspended and has the 13th. So if you can see it as an E flat chord, E flat 13 with the bass B flat, then that would explain most of the notes. But at the same time, clearly there are some notes that aren't that functional, because the C, it's clearly more a passing tone, and that tends to be more the chord that we're seeing. If we just focus on this chord, that can be seen as suspended, right? And when I was saying 13, I actually meant also to include the suspended. sus4, right? Suspended fourth degree. That suspended chord becomes half diminished, which is that chord. Then we have this dissonance. And we arrive to probably one of the densest chords so far, which is this. Right, so this chord is D flat minor. The D flat has already been there. D flat minor, we have the 9th, the 11th, and the sharp 6, which is the 13th. In a way, it's this chord. Here is the D flat minor. So I would look at it as D flat minor and label all the notes that are not D flat minor. So this is the 11th, that is the 6th note, and that's the 9th. Usually harmony, when you have this chromatic harmony, can be viewed as two components. One is the original triad, D flat minor, and then all the other notes are color tones. You have the 9th, you might have the 11th, you could have the 13th, which is the 6th. And that's basically what's happening here. Right. So from this D flat enriched with the chromatic notes, we arrive to we arrive back to C major. Now this dominant is just a suspended chord, nothing particularly special. It's sus4, sus4 chord with the melodic major descending motion. And after this, well, the D natural is clearly like the Lydian sound that's basically pointing towards the ascending motion. Even in these directions, and this is a very subtle detail, but you can see how John is carefully thinking about all of the contrary motions and directions by trying to propose something like this. So the contrary motion, I mean, was quite freer here, but in this moment, I think it's quite clean and very explicit. So once we arrive to the final chord, which is C major, from this moment onwards, what we have is the build-up that will lead us to the coda, right? So let's kind of first play the development. So this is how it all sounds. The difference between the previous presentations and this one is that previously we had a pedal point of the dominant, of the tonic. Now it's the pedal point of the dominant. So basically we've moved from one function to the other. Now we're standing on the dominant, and this build up on the dominant, which is precisely what we're witnessing here, is what allows us to increase tension. So all of this pedal point, it's basically creating a standing on the dominant. And by doing this, we're increasing tension and buildup. And this buildup, compared to the first one, which was already quite big and large, is even larger, because the first original buildup only had one bar of pedal point in the dominant. It was just this. But now we're having, from the very beginning, right, all of that, and then this. Which arrives to the culmination. So this is really a very strong build-up. Now, as that is happening and the original theme is being restated, something very special happens, and it's a canon. So I would like to highlight this canon maybe with purple. I have this melody here. And the left hand is just basically validating that same melody in the lower interval, which is there. Technically, it's just up to this moment. And after that, we continue hearing the yellow motif. I mean, the yellow motif was also here, just in case we needed to highlight it. But here it's continuing. I really struggle playing this part with the big leaps in the bass. But what it is an inversion of the green motif, which was the chromatic scales. Now it's being presented as the blue motif. So the blue motif was this descent. We could even maybe include the chords with that because it's this motif in full. And after that's being presented, we have back the green motif. The green motif is the ascending scales. They're already present here, which gives us nice contrary motion. So one thing is being descending, and the other one is ascending. That's basically this complementary contrary motion. We can see it there. And the green motif continues. So what you're seeing is this form of development, which is fragmentation, acceleration, right? So we're having first, it was an eighth notes, now it's triplets. So it's an acceleration. And with this acceleration, we're just speeding up. So and arrive there. Probably, I mean, the fact that we arrive to E is significant because after that we get to the G. So by doing this, there is a further point here, which is actually maybe the strongest culmination, and that is being confirmed with the very last chord, which is that one. So this is like the highest, the culmination. And probably the highest note, I mean, is here. So that's the highest pitch, because we're arriving to this very, very high B flat, which is right there. And that's how it sounds. So back to where we were. I mean, the bass line is not fully ascending, which is important because if everything was just moving upwards, it would be too direct. So there's a little bit of this direct motion at the beginning. It's trying to build up, but then it's contrary motion. And we arrive to the dominant. In this moment, also the green motif, which I wanted to highlight, is present in the bottom, right? So you can clearly see how that green motif is built. Right, so now let's go and explain the harmonic components, because this is basically what happens at the melodic level. In terms of direction, it's all an extended form of buildup, right? Extended form of buildup. And really the tension that's being accumulated resolves eventually in that C major chord. But the crescendo process already started here, so this is the beginning of the crescendo process, which eventually leads to that big explosion in triple F and Feroce. Right, so harmonically we have C major, but as it's all on a pedal point of the dominant, the function it's C over G, it still felt more as a dominant rather than a tonic. This is a very typical horn-like brass texture. So horns usually you play with natural harmonics. You would find that sort of sound, and it's very orchestral. So it in this range probably is closer to trumpets, and it would be interesting to orchestrate this piece to kind of get a sense of all of these colors. But that would be easily played with the trumpets, right? And in terms of the harmony, we're just arriving at the very same harmonic implications as A. The only difference is that they sound as dominant because, or due to the pedal point, which is a dominant pedal point in the bass. So still this is Lydian, and that's augmented, right? So these are like the main sonorities. Now this place is the same, but here we have a novelty. So this is all the same as bar 2, same harmony as bar 2, but here we have a novelty, which is this specific B flat. That is change of harmony. In this case specifically, what we're feeling is a dominant 7th chord. And this dominant 7th basically transforms that chord and it becomes the dominant of F major. This is exactly the same technique that we see in Bach's C major prelude when he does and goes to this C7, right? So in this case, and that is kind of a moment where you either decrease the tension or you build up. And here clearly, well, John picked the second, the option of building up. So the fourth is being presented here. That's the 4th degree. The 4th degree is minor. So it's F minor 7th, F minor with a major 7th. That's what we're hearing there. So it's F minor like that. This arrives to the suspended chord, which is this G sus chord. It is a dominant. Now, looking at it from the harmonic point of view, what we have is that harmony. But how is that working, or what is the principle that's behind of it? Well, the principle is that you have a half diminished chord, and that goes to the dominant. And that half diminished chord, in this case, it's the half diminished of D, G. I think we've seen a little bit of that principle in Sibelius's Les Sapines, which is on my channel. And it's this sort of bass line where we would have an ascending sequence. So we have D, G, ta, 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 ascending circle of 5th. Now here it's quite hidden because the way that's being added, you have all of the chromatic ingredients around, but in essence it's the same thing. So we have and the principle is quite simple. So, of course, it sounds as F minor, but this F minor becomes the 2nd degree and the dominant of C major, right? Now we have the 2nd degree and the dominant of D minor, and then we have the same thing in E major, the 2nd degree and the dominant of E minor. And we can continue that and do that on F and all forth. So this sort of sequence, which is an ascending sequence, and I can probably highlight it here with a progressional squares. So we have this sort of sequence, ascending sequence with a 2-5. It's quite effective for building up because you have. But the only thing that's characterizing it is that we have the inversions. So D minor, F minor in this case, or D half diminished, sorry, is presented with the first inversion, and then F is becoming the 7th. That's the first inversion. That's with the 7th G. The first inversion, and now we have the 7th, and eventually that leads to the A flat. He could have done here the augmented 6, but we have instead this half diminished sonority. So it's an exploration, I would say, of the half diminished chords, and this is eventually, well, the 2nd degree of C major. So we're going back to C. You can practice this sort of cycle on your own. I mean, it's not too difficult. And all you need is D minor is 7th, flat 5. That's the foundation chord. Going to G7th, right? Or its equivalent dominant. By equivalent dominant, I mean B diminished, for instance. So in this case, we might go to G7 or B diminished. That's the same function. Now, once you do this, just do the same thing, step higher. You have it here, going to A7, which is the same as C sharp diminished. And after that, you have E minor, which in E minor, we have the 2nd degree, it's F sharp minor 7th flat 5, which would go to B7 or D sharp diminished, which is basically that chord. So this is the harmonic structure. I can play it once more. Right, I'll play it again. Right. And it's quite straightforward because all we do is we just move one note lower. And we could do it one step higher. Is going to be step higher. And probably just we can do 6 of these because it's a whole tone scale. We're just moving a step higher each time. So that's basically how this all functioned. I mean, initially it started with this relationship of dominant of the 4th going to the 4th. Right, C7th going to F minor, but then that F minor quickly got transformed as D half diminished. And then we arrive to the final statement. Right, all of this is a chromatic scale, so I mean, it's clearly a chromatic ascending scale. This chromatic ascending scale is building up and creating all sorts of interesting chords. You have this, that's a normal suspended, that's another dissonant, right? And in a way, what it does with this chromatic scale, does to the left hand is that it contracts the number of notes. So we started with 4 notes, then we move to 3, and eventually we just have 2. This could be compensated though by having an extra voice added above. So you could have and kind of keep adding notes above. But well, that wasn't the case in this moment. Just we have this steady pedal point, which is also a pedal point, the F above. And basically it's being contracted. So you have from the F sharp, which is a very dissonant, is the leading tone of G. So that's the first moment that we start hearing, it's the leading tone of G. And from that leading tone of G, we're moving to all of these different chords. So I want to fix this. Then we have the chromatic scale, and it basically takes us from the F sharp to the high E. It's almost an octave going upwards, so it's a very fast motion. And by extending this, obviously what we're getting is, after this unstable, so this is instability, it's motion, modulations, it's this constant change and modulation, we're getting to something more grounded, but at the same time it's a raiser. So it's raising up, moving upwards and getting louder and louder. Right. Once we arrive here, we get to the coda, which I've never actually played properly because This piece is basically John's. I didn't really touch anything here, so it's like that. So what are the materials? Where are they coming from? Mostly is the chromatic scale. We have the chromatic fragments that are going upwards, and we have the ones that go downwards. So let's identify them. These are the ascending ones that I'm putting with the green. And I think, well, they're quite clear. They're not repeating much more, as not that I can see of them. Well, you can have them here in a condensed harmonic form. So this is the harmonic form of the green motif. You have like the second at once present there, and it's also the Lydian major chord. Right, so major chord is this. When you add the F sharp, you have this Lydian. By the way, I was actually in my previous episode 15, writing a Lydian prelude and explaining all of the thinking process behind that. So this is moving upwards, as you can see, and then the other hand is just doing the contrary motion. So we have the descending line. Now it's descending here, and here we have a little bit of finally culminative descending motion, right? So with that culminative descending motion, we have the culmination or the climax that arrives there to that quadruple F. Where are the descending lines? Well, let's put them with blue. So the blue is for the chromatic half steps that are going down. You have the A flat to the G, A flat G here, and another one is appearing there. The B flat A flat is again the C major melodic scale. That's C, D, E, F, G, A flat, B flat, and C, right? And I really like the emphasis on the Lydian component, which is this F sharp, which is done twice, and it's basically presented in a magnificent way as an augmented sixth chord. So that is an augmented sixth that we're basically hitting twice. And that's the cadential gesture because, well, you had the actual cadence happens here. And now that's the resolution. The augmented sixth, it's almost like a neighbor tone. So the melodies also change directions, and this is very remarkable because first we have the ascending bass, and then we have the descending bass. So here where John is purposely avoiding the exact repetitions. There's actually something that we're discussing with John at the moment because oftentimes he is presenting no exact repetitions because the intention is like to keep the music always varying and moving forward, but also the risk of just constantly changing is to lose the coherence and unity. In this case, the piece is saved clearly by the repetition of the motif, the opening, the yellow motif, that's basically giving cohesion and coherence to the entire piece. That cohesion means that the piece is making sense and having a logical development, which basically is built from that motif. Now at the very ending we are not seeing it, but we're seeing some other type of motif, which is this. So that can be qualified probably as the descending motifs, and then we have the ascending one, which is the green. So it's like a combination of these two in a way, right? And that's also ascending, although it's diatonic. So it's the combination of these two, of both versions of the Y motif, which is the chromatic second, right? So that second or chromatic second is interval of a second is really what's guiding us and taking us to the final root. And after that we have this. So I think that pretty much summarizes the essence of the piece. What we'll do is I'll play it again so you can hear it, but not me. I'll just put John's recording as we'll be looking at the score. And then after that, we'll just have a few closing remarks about the piece. So let's listen to the performance of John playing this. Right, so this is pretty much it. I mean, all I can say is bravo, and that I'm extremely proud of John's music, and I think that, well, this level of composition is very mature, extremely mature even for adults. I mean, and this is just a young boy who is writing this. So who knows what he will be writing in 10, 20 years. And I really have big hopes in him, and I really hope that this keeps building up. So here, I just wanted to make clear this chord is a very unique chord because it's the 7th, and you have like this G7, but it's sus4, right? So that's also a very great way of ending there by presenting this chord. So what are the lessons for compositions? For composition students, apart from John, I mean, for John, I really hope that probably you're watching this video in this moment. So I really hope that you find this analysis enlightening, because it kind of reflects a lot on the different things that we were discussing back then when you were writing this. So hope this serves a little bit as a summary of all of the techniques, and also it gives you a clear direction for where to keep pursuing composition and coherently using motifs. Right now, I really see that you're moving a lot with the materials and developing them in a very strong way. So it's very easy for you to just take one idea and keep moving it. But it's also important not to forget the importance and the value of repetition. And in this case, I think one of the greatest lessons, apart from all of this beautiful counterpoint that's moving and creating all of these fantastic sonorities and chords, is that there is this yellow motif, and there are all of these unity, smaller units like the green and the blue motifs that basically are across the entire piece. And in spite of just having this very simple, relatively simple, for it's an ABA, and you have inside A another ABA, it has a lot of sense, and it gives the musical fabric a lot of logic. Another lesson, and this actually goes to everyone, is the way that in this piece we can see the building up processes. So it's not a piece that has no direction, it's just moving in a loud moment. From the very first notes, we can see how the piece is moving upwards. So bar 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, till bar 5, it's all a big build-up. But then we have a little pause and we keep building up until we arrive to bar 13. So there is a very good sense of direction, and after that's been achieved, there is some section of rest, which is just 13, 14, 15, 16, and after that we have a second build-up. Another good lesson for build-ups is that if you do 2 in a row, the second one has to be larger or bigger than the first one. So this is actually the case. We have the second one being extended with the extended building up with the chromatic notes, this unstable harmony, but also the pedal point. And once we arrive there, we are doing something very good, which is not dropping immediately, right? Because here, for instance, we've just stopped. I mean, in bar 13 could technically have just begun with a coda and you could have ended the piece easily. But the thing is that in the second build-up, once we arrive to the fortissimo, we are having a very prolongated section. Well, it's just 4 bars that you heard John play better than me in this sense. And it's this triple F part that's very strong, and we're not losing tension. It's just building up and it's staying in this loud and strong moment. So it's important when writing music in any style to think of how the musical tension or direction is moving. Am I staying for too long in a music that's not going anywhere? Am I just building up too much and not arriving anywhere? In this piece, we have a good example of a balance. So there's first a build-up, a section of repose. After that, a major build-up, larger than the first, and then a section of tension or build-up where we're just staying on this dominant, the piumos, right? So that pretty much would be a general lesson for all of them. I really hope that this piece doesn't scare all of you who are watching this channel, so you don't give up composing. I really want you to all try writing music, because I think that writing music is one of the most beautiful experiences and artistic experiences that we can have with sound and the arts in general. So I'm wishing you all a productive week, and well, I'll be seeing you next week with more music. So this week we have the music of John Samuel, who is now our recent addition to the YouTube channel. And if you really like this prelude, let us know in the comments, so we can maybe even get to feature John in one of the videos, talking to him and also seeing probably a few more of his pieces. So also you can ask questions to John in the comments. That's something that I wanted to mention before I leave, because he'll be watching this video and he could probably also reply to some of your questions. So if you have any questions concerning his musical ideas, the composition process, or the musical interest that he has, I really hope that all of these questions will be answered and arrive to him. So without further ado, thank you all for watching. If you want to support the channel, please do that via Patreon. On Patreon, you could find this musical analysis. In addition, you could also find ways to contact me to have one-to-one lessons like the ones that John is having, or having group lessons where we all interact in a more colloquial manner where we're just sharing feedback. So have a great week and see you soon. Bye-bye.